Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another deck report. This is Season 4, Week 15, and today I bring you a really cool experiment that I kind of wanted to try out. There wasn't many uploads this past week, despite a lot of things happening in both the TCG and OCG, because I was testing a deck for a big event this weekend, and I am very excited to show you this deck. I will talk about the deck overall, the theory behind it, a few couple of experiences that I had, because this is a first time me trying out something like this, and the results of the big tournament that I played at, and the changes I would do and make in the future. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So, I chose to play Ritual Beast this past week, and there are a couple of reasons for it. What led me to play Ritual Beast is that right now we're at a format where there are no comfortable picks for any event. The most comfortable pick is going to be the deck that you have the most knowledge and experience with, if you're going to do well at events, as long as you prepare and test for the meta game itself. Ryziel and Maliss are two really powerful decks, and there are two really good strategies that you can play at some events if you're knowledgeable enough with them. But that's not to say that those decks are perfect. Being meta contenders means that they're heavily targeted at the moment, and we're pretty much at a pace in the game where if your deck construction and your deck prowess is not good enough, then you might as well play another deck this format. That being said, Ritual Beast is not a really comfortable pick at the moment. Artifact Lancia is in the format, and that is a very powerful card that can be used against this deck. But I reached the conclusion that most games I will lose to Lancia with Ritual Beast are games are probably going to lose to Lancia if I play Maliss. And I tested that theory on Thursday. On Thursday, I played a very different build from what the build is being seen on the screen. I pretty much played like a cookie cutter Ritual Beast deck with the Nemesis cards and with Shifter, and as well as the standard engines you would expect from Ritual Beast. But it didn't go so well. The number one reason for it is I barely resolved the Nemesis engine. The Nemesis engine was very awkward for me. Adding to that, I did lose a game 3 on round 5 to Ryziel because of Lancia. And it's funnily enough, it wasn't even Lancia what won them the game. It was Lancia paired with Fualas, and what? I tried to punish their flawless play from the main phase by talent, like looking at their hand. Their only starter was X Ryziel and Sword Ryziel. I put X Ryziel back out into their deck. I set Solemn Strike, which was in my other build, and I pretty much put him on better draw the extender, and they did. They drew for turn Ice Ryziel, and Sword Ryziel was the extender already in their hand, so that pretty much won them the match. But yeah, I spoke too much about the prelude leading to this deck. I'm going to show you the deck itself, and then I'll show you some really cool things and applications that involve this current deck list. So, we have 3 Elder, 3 Lara, 2 Conohawks, 2 Rampengus, OG Lara, OG Wen, Winda, the 1 copy of Inheritance, and then we have the 1 copy of Steeds. So, I'm going to do this a little bit different from how I do other past deck reports. I know on other deck reports I showed the deck list entirely and then I explain everything behind it, but you're going to notice that this deck is very different from what I'm used to. So I kind of want to explain the engines and explain like everything that goes hand in hand. So you will see already by the title of the video, this is not a pure Ritual Beast deck. But we are playing another engine in here. So that means that you have to cut on some Ritual Beast cards in order to fit the other engines if you want to open consistently. And the cards that made the cut were Apelio, Pedalfin, as well as more copies of Inheritance. The main reason for that is because those cards are not true starters or extenders. Those are basically engine requirements for Ritual Beast. And Ritual Beast isn't the most consistent deck out there. If you're going to be playing another engine in your deck that is besides the Ritual Beast cards, you have to cut down on some cards that are tied to Ritual Beast if you don't want to break as much. One issue that I had this past week, and you will see later on in this video, not many of my hands were really that consistent. But we'll talk about that as we go along. So the other reason I'm playing only 1 Inheritance instead of multiples is because we're in a format where Ryziel Detonator is very popular. And opening this card going second against a Detonator, if you don't have Lara specifically, it just puts you in a very awkward position. It did happen to me this past week where I did face a Detonator and I did open this. I lost that game, but it was not due to the Detonator. It was due to something else. I will explain that later. But yeah, this is the Ritual Beast engine. You will see that the extra deck engine of Ritual Beast is also cut by a small margin. Now, what made me convinced to play Ritual Beast in the first place, and this is the first time ever me showcasing this in a deck report, is I'm playing the Fiendsmith engine. So, what the Fiendsmith cards do specifically in Ritual Beast, it layers you a couple of interactions and follow-up besides just your Ritual Beast cards. Once I get to the side deck, I will show you another engine, and then I'll show you a combo involving these 2 to 3 card engines, or these 2 to 3 engines in general, and how they pivot one from the other. But yeah, I will talk about my thoughts on Fiendsmith on another video. It's probably going to be in the EJ Gaming YouTube channel, so stay tuned for that if you're already following. It's going to be in Spanish, so that's going to be one disclaimer that I'm gonna give. But yeah, the TLDR is the main reason this engine was in here was to play around Artifact Lancia and give you other forms of disruption besides just your Ritual Beast cards, because the Ritual Beast deck itself is not strong enough against the current format. Ryziel and Maliss are not bad matchups for Ritual Beast. They're not. However, their engine is way tougher than ours, and their level of recursion could outweigh the ones that normally Ritual Beast would be able to fit in. So we needed another engine to just make sure that we can pivot well into those matchups. But at the same time, we needed an engine that can play well into Artifact Lancia. That's why the Nemesis package is no longer in here. We are playing the Fiendsmith cards instead. And I feel like the theory behind everything in this deck was correct. I really liked this idea. I'll showcase you more a little bit later. So, I chose to play a set of non-engine. I feel like in this particular format, you have to play a very specific amount of non-engine. You can't just play 2 to 3 board breakers or 2 to 3 hand traps and call it a day. So my non-engine of choice was Ghost Ogre, Ash Blossom, Droll and Lockbird. Call by the Grave is considered non-engine, so I'll put this in here. Triple Talents, Emergency Teleport. This is both as extender in our deck and is also non-engine because it can pivot into the Ghost Ogre. Book of Eclipse, Infinite Impermanence, and the most important one, and the number one reason why I also played Fiendsmith alongside Ritual Beast, is Dominus Purge. If Dominus Purge was not a card, I probably would not be playing this deck. This card is incredibly powerful right now. This card is one of the best hand traps against Ryziel, mainly because the Ryziel deck cannot play this card, so you don't fear Crossout Designator. The other reason why this card is really powerful is that it also plays around Triple Tactic Talent, and this also plays around Ryziel Cross. So that is a very big deal this format. This card is not very strong against Maliss, but our Maliss matchup is not that bad at all. So I don't fear like having this card. This card is also really good against the other decks, like against Blue Eyes and against Mermail. Atlantean, this card is very powerful as well. So this was the non-engine I chose to play. I'll talk about my experience with it afterwards, but if you make the count, it's like 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 23. There's 23 non-engine cards in this deck, which is a really good amount considering the deck that I'm playing. And that's the main deck. It's 45 cards in total. It is a hefty amount because of the amount of non-engine, but at the same time, the number one reason I played over 40 is because this deck does have engine requirements that you really just don't want to open with. Like, it has a hefty amount. And it's sad to say, I did open a lot of this non-engine. Like, a good number of times. But we'll talk about that after the profile. So, main deck is 45 cards. Before I talk about the extra deck, I want to talk about the main deck first, because the extra deck will lead into it. So, I chose Ghost Bell, Lancia. I'll save this one for last. Lightning Storm, Thrust, Duster, 2 Solemn Judgments, and before I'm going to show two side engines. The first side engine that I want to talk about, and something that I tried out in my side deck, and another reason why I also like to play this deck, is Majesty's Fiend. So what does Majesty's Fiend do for us? Against very specific decks, I'm talking about Blue Eyes, Maliss, and Mermail specifically, this card is basically an FTK. Like, if you summon this monster, they have no outs. Those are all heavy monster engine decks. Like, not many of those decks that I just mentioned play a lot of board breakers. So it's very awkward to beat this card if like you go first and you summon this monster. And the really cool part about this card is that if you know that you're facing those decks, you can just sit on this card and alongside like your defensive cards. Dominance Purge is another defensive card you can play under Majesty Fiend, so that's another really cool thing to mention. After you skip their turn with the Majesty Fiend is a light Fiend monster, so you can link away the Majesty Fiend into the Fiendsmith Requiem, and the Fiendsmith Requiem can jumpstart into your Fiendsmith combo. Furthermore, mentioning this, you can recycle back your Majesty Fiend back into your deck. So if you end up with another copy of Fiendsmith Tract, you can just grab back the Majesty Fiend, and if you didn't OTK your opponent, you can just summon the Majesty Fiend and skip their turn again. So that was the theory behind it. This doesn't work against every deck. That's why it's in the side deck. Ryziel can beat over this card if they open specifically X Ryziel, because they can X Ryziel into another monster. Those are all inherent summons, and then they can XYZ summon into Dual Drive and just run over this card, because Dual Drive does have 2500 attack. 2700 attack if you count the materials, because the Majesty Fiend does not stop that passive effect. That's why it's in the side deck and not in the main deck. I really like the theory behind this. I think if any player is playing the Fiendsmith engine, you should look into this, at least while the Fiendsmith engine is intact, because this is really good right now. Another engine that I chose to play, and this is another reason why I made this deck, it's an engine that came out thanks to Maze of the Master, and that is the Apophis engine. So, why do I play these cards? So, I'm gonna show you like one specific combo. This is a typical Ritual Beast hand that you will see in this deck. And check this out. With this, we're going to pivot into Fiendsmith. And then from Fiendsmith, we're going to pivot into the Rabbit. Rabbit setting the Apophis trap. What does this do for us? It gives us the ability to activate the deity, like against our opponent. And for those who don't know how this engine works, you set the Apophis on your opponent's turn, you flip the Apophis Serpent. The Apophis Serpent is going to set the deity. And then during your opponent's main phase, you can flip the deity, and this card becomes a pseudo Desiree for any card that is activated on the field. Which means your combo is insulated by Word Breakers, like Metal Tronus, Forbidden Droplets, like Ultimate Slayer. All those cards just get stopped by the deity. Another really cool thing about this deck is if you open specifically Book of Eclipse, after you resolve your two Apophis monsters, because of the way these cards are worded, if you activate Book of Eclipse, the Apophis set back on your spell and trap zone. So it means you have an extra layered interruption with both your Apophises, and you have two engine pushes with your Apophis cards on your opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. Now let's go back here. This is just to show you that after you set up this engine, you don't fear anything anymore. You don't fear Fualas, you don't fear Nibiru, you don't fear other stuff. So you can just go ham with your Ritual Beast engine, and this engine just becomes a lot more resilient. If you decide to go all out with your Ritual Beast engine, this is like one example end board that you have. Like, you have guaranteed follow-up because of Ultino Kudrago. You have the Ritual Beast cards that can insulate you as defensive cards against your opponent, so they're not gonna OTK you this turn, I can assure you. You have the Swamp Deity, and that's not even counting your non-engine. And another note, you have the Lacrima Requiem setup with Fiendsmith Paradise as another interruption. That's really, really strong. Now, let's say, for example, you get Lanciad or Fualos. Well, by doing that, you can just make the Rabbit instead of making everything else. And Rabbit setting up apophis with non-engine backup is really, really strong. You're only giving one draw to your opponent, maybe 2 draws if you count the teleport, or maybe if it really depends on the sequence of behind Fualos. But yeah, like this is still very strong because you still have your Ritual Beast engine as follow-up on the next turn to guarantee you pushing against your opponent. So yeah, this was the side deck and the main deck. Now let's go for the extra deck. Since you see how the combo works and you saw the engine that is being played, yeah, let's show the rest of it. So Silo Hat Rabbit, this in the extra deck because of the apophis cards. Requiem, Close Heaven, Sequence, 2 Kimu Falcos, 1 Retiari, Caesar, Typhon, 2 Kanahawks, 1 Noku Drago, 1 Gaia Pelio, the Necroquip Princess, and the Desiree. So this was the extra deck that I chose to play. In the future, something I will probably do is I will put another copy of Noku Drago. I had one game specifically against Fiendsmith Ryziel, and I was put in a very awkward position. Shoutouts to Derek. He did top that yesterday's double case tourney. So against him, I was put in a very awkward spot because he is also playing the Fiendsmith engine, and he had Caesar on board, and I tried to play around the Caesar with my Ritual Beast cards. These are all contact fusions, so if you open Elder in one name, you can beat over Caesar. The way you do it is you summon Kimu Falcos, you banish your materials from Kimu Falcos into Noku Drago, and Noku Drago has 3000 attack. So you can run over the Caesar. Another really cool thing is under Ryziel Detonator, they can only target the Noku Drago. And if you have Lara in your graveyard, like the Ritual Beast Tamer Lara in your graveyard, you're pretty much safe from Detonator by doing this as well. So that came up. However, Detonator can protect Caesar. So I was put into a spot where I had to XYZ away my Noku Drago into Typhon. But that meant losing my Noku Drago and not having another copy for follow-up. If I had a second Noku Drago, I 100% would have won that game. Because not only did I insulate their engine and I broke their board, I had guaranteed follow-up with the second Noku Drago with the Ritual Beast cards. And this also tag out into their other Ritual Beast as well. So it's a very, very sticky board to like get rid of like after you do the crackback. So in the future, I will probably play Noku Drago, second Noku Drago in my extra deck, and I would move Silo Hat Rabbit to my side deck. Because this card doesn't contribute to anything in game 1. Another card that I did miss was SP Little Knight. The last card in my extra deck was between SP Little Knight and Sky Crisis. I opted for Sky Crisis because I felt like this situation was going to come up enough times, especially with Ryziel Detonator. And it did. It definitely did. The one thing that you have to be mindful of, and this involves Sky Crisis, and this involves Wave King Caesar. I think these are the only two cards that conflict. I don't have anything else in my deck that conflicts with this. At least engine-wise. You have to be mindful of Dominus Purge when you try to summon these monsters. If you have Dominus Purge in your hand, you should be setting it. Or you can save your Dominus Purge for after you use your Caesar interruptions. But the scenarios where the Dominus Purge will take priority over the Caesar will happen enough times. So yeah, this was the deck. I really liked the deck. I really think the deck was very cool. I played at a double case tourney this past weekend. My record was 3-3. My 3 victories was against Tempai Dragons. It was against Tempai Dragons, against White Forest Azamina Fiendsmith, and it was against it was against Gladiator Beast. Those were the 3 decks that I won against this past weekend. My 3 losses were against Maliss, Ryziel, and the Millennium Exodia deck. And those losses don't have to do with the matchups. Like, the matchup were not the really big losses. The main reason for those losses is I kept opening very awkward hands with the one-of like engine cards. This is why I played a 45 card deck list and not 40, because you saw a few of those engine requirements. This deck is pretty much very similar to Rescue Ace in that degree, and I kid you not. I kid you not. This Wen and this Lara were glued to my hand at least 5 to 6 games. I think I saw Lara in my opening hand like 8 times. And it's a shame, because if that Lara would have been the other Lara, those 8 games were probably guaranteed victories. I don't think I have to explain how powerful the new Lara is compared to the old one. Like, heck, even a hand of double Lara, it's a good enough hand. This is still full Ritual Beast, Fiendsmith, and Rabbit combo by itself. But yeah, that has been the deck report. Will I play this deck again? I don't know. I do want to experiment with other decks. Why did I play this over something like Maliss? The problem with Maliss is a lot of Maliss monster extenders. Unless you're like me and play the Danger Engine, a lot of the monster extenders that you play in the Maliss deck are extenders that lose to Artifact Lancia. Like, your real extenders in that deck are Underground, Gold Sarcophagus, your Bestials, and if they Lancia you, you cannot use any of those extenders. While in the Ritual Beast deck, you have Emergency Teleport, the Elder is an extra normal summon, you have the Fiendsmith engine itself as well. So you have a plethora of ways of just like opening in a good enough cards to play around Lancia. I got Lancia'd 4 times this past week, and I won every single game I got Lancia'd. That's probably wouldn't have not been the case if I played the Maliss deck. Because again, like the Maliss list the pack showed, as well as Thrift this past week or so, the Fiendsmith cards are really good, and they do fix the Lancia issue. But if you don't open the Fiendsmith cards, you don't have an in-engine way of extending to and bridging into the Fiendsmith cards under Lancia. But that is an experiment for another day. That's it from me. I hope you found this informative to your liking and understanding. Until next time, keep practicing and keep dueling.